inquiry. Good morning, Mr. Lewis.
Good morning, madam. Good morning.
Morning, Mr. Yarwood.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Cosgrove.
Morning, madam.
Good morning. Okay, so I shall resume this inquiry into the appeal made by William Davis Limited under Section 78 of the Town and Country Planning Act 1990 against the decision of Derbyshire Dales District Council to refuse planning permission for a hybrid planning application accompanied by an environmental statement comprising of an outline planning application with approval being sought for site access for up to 345 residential units, Class E commercial uses including retail and a restaurant cafe, a hot food takeaway sui generis use, and open space including a countryside park and play area and associated landscaping and surface water attenuation, and a full planning application for 78 residential units with associated access, open space, landscaping and surface water attenuation at land at Gritstone Road and Pinewood Road, Matlock DE4 3GD. This is the 7th day of the inquiry. The inquiry opened in March this year. We had a session on the 4th of July which covered the last of the evidence, and today we're hearing closing statements from the Wolds Action Group, the council and the appellant. If you could please make sure that your mobile phones or other devices that you're not using for the inquiry are on silent or switched off, and please ensure that you're muted and that you unmute successfully should you wish to speak. Just a few housekeeping matters up front. Since we last sat on the 4th of July, several documents have been submitted to the inquiry document library. And these are ID 45, which is a statement of qualifications and experience for David Pendle from the appellant's side. Then ID 46, which is a letter from Baroness Taylor of Stevenage, Parliamentary Under Secretary of State for Housing and Local Government, to John Whitby MP regarding housing numbers in the presence of national parks. Then we have ID 47, which is the appellant's note, which was requested at the session on the 4th of July following a question from Councillor Wayne, and that is with regard to the connection to the public sewer. And there's also ID 48, which is Severn Trent Water public sewer or lateral drain connections guidance notes. So all of these documents are available on the inquiry website. Thank you to the council for loading those up. It's much appreciated. I don't have any other housekeeping matters apart from just wanting to ask Mr. Lewis how the signing of the legal agreement is progressing, please. Mr. Lewis.
Certainly, madam. I had an email correspondence from my solicitor on this issue very recently, progressing very well and according to schedule, madam. We are expecting to be able to complete all signatures at some point within the next few days. She wasn't able, unfortunately, understandably perhaps, to be more specific about how many days, but it is on track, it is on schedule, and we will update you, madam, with progress. And certainly we're not anticipating any problems with progress, but we will certainly let you know if there are any unanticipated hiccups, but at the moment progressing well.
I think you were going to update me when it had reached the county council. Has it done so yet?
Not to my knowledge, madam. No, I have I'm expecting that same indication from my solicitor. I've not received that indication yet, so I will infer, unless I'm told otherwise by my team, that it hasn't yet reached the county council, but we're not anticipating that it won't reach them imminently, if that's helpful.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, if there's any more progress during the session today, you can update me later.
Certainly.
Okay, thank you. Are there any procedural or housekeeping matters from any of the parties? And if I can start with the Wolds Action Group first of all. Mr. Yarwood, anything?
No, nothing to report at this stage.
Okay, thank you. And anything from the council?
No, thank you very much.
Thank you. And was there anything further, Mr. Lewis, from the appellant?
Nothing from us, madam. Thank you.
Okay, so Does everybody have access to a copy of the Wolds Action Group's closings? Thank you, Mr. Yarwood, for circulating it to me. Has the appellant and the council received it?
I've not received it, madam. I don't think. Let me just double check my email again. I have not. Ms. Saffa, the council solicitor, has another engagement this morning. So she, if it's been sent to her, it will need to be sent directly, I'm afraid, to someone else in the appellant's team, Mr. Yarwood. I wonder, did you send it only to Miss Saffa, Mr. Yarwood, or have you sent it to someone else on our side?
Sorry, but I assumed that Cummer Brown would circulate
Indeed.
it.
And I suspect what's happened is that Mr. Brown might only have sent it to Miss Saffa. I wonder, Mr. Yarwood, would you be able to send it to me directly? My email's in the public domain anyway, so I don't mind giving it to you on this.
I'm going to do that.
Yeah, two can from doing.
Let me send you. Let me give you my email. My email is glewis. That's all one word. glewis.
Well, bear with me. We'll take it down.
That's fine. That's fine. You tell me when you're ready.
G. Lewis, yes.
Yeah, glewis, all one word, at Landmark Chambers.
At Landmark Chambers, yes.
.co.uk.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will let you know when that arrives.
Okay, I have also just sent a request to Kerr's line manager, Helen Skinner, in terms of sending it on to the council and the appellant, and I've just provided her with your email address, Mr. Lewis, so it should
That's
reach
very
you
kind.
rather than Ms. Saffa. But if we just...
Just doing that. Sorry, madam, I'm in the same boat as Mr. Lewis, but I suspect Mr. Shipley's on the email address list that you've asked, so if it gets to him,
Yeah.
it'll get to us. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Helen usually responds very quickly, so I shall see. Alternatively, to prevent delay, Mr. Yarwood, have you been able to send that on?
Yes, we hope it's now winging its way through the ether.
Thank you very much. We'll give it another minute or so, and if not, I can always screen share because I have a copy of the statement, but I'm sure it'd be preferable to have it.
Madam, thank you. We now have a copy of it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully Mr. Lewis should receive it imminently.
Yes, not quite yet. Maybe if we just give it another, if it doesn't come within the next minute or so, madam, I'm more than happy for you to share screen and we can deal with it that way.
Okay, thank you.
We do have some filters sometimes on our system which can hold some emails up.
Mm.
Madam, I'm more than happy if you want to share screen.
Okay.
That causes me no difficulty at all.
Okay.
Oh, and I know how it.
I shall stop sharing.
Thank you.
Okay. Everybody happy for Mr. Yarwood to make a start on closings? Yep. Okay,
indeed.
thank
Thank
you. Mr. Yarwood, could the Walls Action Group please provide its closing submissions?
Thank you. This is a strongly contested proposal for the development of a sensitive site. The Rule 6 parties have taken an active role in this inquiry to ensure the community's legitimate and wide-ranging concerns are properly heard. Over the course of the inquiry, it has been shown that the appeal proposal would cause lasting harm over a range of important planning issues. These harms are substantial and will not be adequately mitigated. We submit the adverse impacts significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. Accordingly, planning permission should be refused, notwithstanding that the tilted balance is engaged. On land drainage, given the time available between the council withdrawing its defence of the refusal of permission and the deadline for producing its evidence, the Rule 6 party was unable to commission its own expert witness on land drainage issues. The consultants we spoke to pointed to the massive information they would have to assess and advised that it would not be possible to provide supporting evidence in the time available. We thus had to rely on evidence which falls within the competence of our planning witness. However, compelling evidence raising concerns over land drainage issues has been provided by other third parties, particularly Mr. Ball and Councillor Wayne, whose evidence demonstrated valuable local knowledge of the land drainage issues which beset this part of the town and the potential consequences arising from this development. That evidence was not challenged through cross-examination and should be thus afforded considerable weight. On the planning of the preliminary risk assessment, we submit the evidence you have heard reinforces our case that a preliminary risk assessment of the dams is a fundamental prerequisite to the proper consideration of this proposed development. In the absence of preliminary risk assessment, there is no certainty that the development can be delivered in a manner that will avoid unacceptable flood risk, or that the amount of surface water can be stored safely. We have drawn attention to the advice provided by the reservoir panel engineer to the lead local flood authority. The reservoir panel engineer, who is the foremost expert in such matters, has raised significant concerns relating to the breach potential and downstream consequences of the attenuation ponds, suggesting that they could pose a threat to life and advising on the need for a preliminary risk assessment. The lead local flood authority's assumption that this would all be addressed at the reserve matters stage or discharge of condition stage was foolhardy in the extreme. Our evidence on this was not in reality the subject of cross-examination. Instead, Mr. Lewis sought to challenge our evidence by reference to the geotechnical competence of its experts. But a preliminary risk assessment would need to go well beyond that and examine the risks of failure of the dams and the consequences for life and property. Given the elevation of the dams and the number of properties which could be impacted, there can be few situations where a similar level of risk would arise. Mr. Lewis did ask his own expert witness what assurance he was able to give the inquiry to show that the appellant had considered the panel engineer's expectations that such a risk assessment should include breach evaluation of inundation area, flow depth and flow velocities. In response, Mr. Hilton could only say that those matters have been considered appropriately as they can be. He could not offer any assurance that the risks have been evaluated in accordance with the panel engineer's expectations. There is understandable concern that the ongoing safety and maintenance of the infrastructure will be left to some sort of management company. Could any such company insure against the risks? We do not know. We cannot know without a proper preliminary risk assessment of the risks. I submit that without a preliminary risk assessment, the requirements of paragraph 181, 182C of MPPF are not met. Madam Inspector, you asked me whether, in the event of a risk assessment demonstrating unacceptable risks, the LPA could refuse to approve a reserve matters application, and my reply was the LPA could do so. On reflection, I'm not sure that would be possible. A grant of outline permission is predicated on the assumption that the development is deliverable. It presumes that a reserve matter application can be approved. If this site was in flood zone 2 or 3, no one would dispute that the risk needed to be assessed before the grant of permission. No planning authority would say, we can deal with this by a precondition. We can always refuse permission and if the risk can't be mitigated. That is not a credible position, but it's what's being suggested here. The risks have been identified by the reservoir panel engineer. They're so serious as to potentially pose a risk to life. That a preliminary risk assessment to examine the panel engineer's concerns is necessary is common ground, and the suggestion of agreed conditions confirm that this is a prerequisite to the outline element of the proposal proceeding. The grant of outline permission would establish the principle of development. Thus, if planning permission is granted for this proposal, it must be on the basis that the development is deliverable and that the risk can be mitigated. The assessment of risk is fundamental to establishing whether this site is suitable for the development proposed. In the absence of a preliminary risk assessment, one cannot make that assumption, and we submit that planning permission cannot be granted. Again, we submit this proposal is not compliant with the requirements of paragraph 181 of the PPF. On the sequential test, the need for a sequential test arises from changes to planning practice guidance in August 2022. It's unfortunate that neither the LPA nor the appellant recognised this requirement at the time when it arose. Without a satisfactory sequential test, as required by paragraphs 173 to 175 in MPPF, the application should not be granted permission. Maren's witness accepted that the timescale for preparation was challenging. In our submission, the sequential test prepared by Maren's is not a robust assessment. We have shown that the groundwater risk assessment exhibits significant flaws. It identifies the appeal site as one of the most sequentially preferable. This conclusion is demonstrably illogical. Unlike most of the other sites reviewed, groundwater emergent points at the appeal site are within and upslope of the site. The assessment fails to adequately consider the source of surface water. For instance, is the water accumulation confined to a localized depression within the site boundary, as in the case of Ashbourne Airfield, or is it, more seriously, the result of a wider catchment flow, as is the case at the appeal site? This distinction is crucial. The approach taken on the issue of the catchment is illogical. If the catchment is to include sites as far away as Ashbourne, then it would have been logical to include sites in Brailsford, Doveridge and Hulme Ward, as these are settlements where the council has made significant housing allocations. On the other hand, if, as we would suggest, the catchment is limited to sites close to Matlock, then one must question the exclusion of sites in Middleton by Worksworth, Tansley and more particularly Darley Dale, all of which have significant allocations due in part to their relatively good accessibility to the facilities at Matlock and Worksworth, and in the case of Darley Dale, a comparative level of community facilities and better accessibility to Matlock town centre by foot, cycle and public transport than does the appeal site. Effectively, but illogically, the appellants have limited the area of search to sites within the settlement boundaries of Tier 1 towns. Although a number of sites outside the settlement boundary are included in table at Appendix 1, one of the reasons given for discounting them is site is located outside the settlement boundary. Thus, whilst theoretically including sites outside the settlement boundary, all such sites have been excluded from consideration as to whether they are sequentially preferable. We submit that what the sequential test has done is not logical. Settlement boundaries in the local plan are tightly drawn and thus exclude all significant potential sites other than those that have been allocated. Indeed, if the appeal site had not been allocated, an allocated site, it would have been outside the settlement boundary and on the basis of the appellant's approach would have been excluded from the sequential test. In practice, by excluding sites lying outside the settlement boundaries or potentially sequentially preferable sites were excluded from consideration. That potential sites have been excluded is evident from the fact that many of the sites excluded from Maren's assessment on the basis of being outside the settlement boundary or undevelopable have actually been granted planning permission for housing development. The appellants have argued that smaller sites in combination could not deliver the quantum of required housing, but not all smaller sites were assessed, and none were assessed in Darley-Dale. We suggest that if such sites have been assessed, there is a possibility that these would deliver a sequential preferable provision of housing sites. On affordable housing, we submit that the lack of any provision of affordable housing renders the application unacceptable. On the basis of local plan allocations, this site was to deliver 129 affordable houses. The failure to deliver this will leave a chronic shortfall in the provision of affordable housing to meet the district's needs. Whereas much of the council's housing allocation, particularly in Matlock, is on brownfield land, this is a greenfield site. The brownfield sites thus far permitted have been able to make any affordable housing contribution. This makes it important that any greenfield site to be developed provides affordable housing in accordance with NPPF paragraphs 64 and 66. If the provision of affordable housing is not viable at this site, then we say it is an unsuitable site. It's a greenfield site promoted as a major housing allocation. The absence of any affordable housing undermines the strategic justification for its allocation. Whilst the government has prioritised the need to speed up and increase the delivery of housing, the delivery of housing must be of the right type if it is to address the nation's needs. The appellants have argued that the severe shortage of housing land to meet the district's 5-year need provides compelling support for this proposal. We disagree. In our submission, the need for 5-year housing supply is more important in delivering affordable housing than in delivering open market housing. The MP for this constituency, a member of the government, has submitted evidence to the inquiry, emphasising that the delivery of affordable housing is a crucial element of government policy on the delivery of housing, and that the absence of affordable housing means that this proposal will not contribute appropriately to the housing need. We submit that in the absence of any provision of affordable housing, the proposal is not compliant with paragraphs 64 to 66 of NPPF. Highway and pedestrian safety. The local highway authority has recognised that the increase in traffic entering and leaving Wolds Road at its junction with Chesterfield Road will pose an unacceptable risk, particularly to the safety of children attending Highfield School. The solution being proposed in this application is to relocate the pedestrian crossing across Chesterfield Road, which provides a route to the school. Whilst we fully understand the dangers which will be faced by children crossing Wolds Road, we do not believe the relocation of the pedestrian crossing will provide a safe solution. We do not believe that the risks associated with this proposed solution have been properly assessed. We take the view that the proposal will do more harm than good. Relocating the crossing will create several problems, which in our submission have not been thoroughly evaluated in terms of safety. On your visit, Madam Inspector, we are sure you will have seen and appreciated the pedestrian safety concerns which will arise from this proposal. Children leaving the school currently approach the crossing at the school exit, and this provides a space for children to assemble and wait while traffic is brought to a halt. The relocation would require children waiting for an opportunity to cross Chesterfield Road to queue along what will be a relatively long and necessarily narrow path with limited capacity, posing a new risk of overcrowding and roadside conflict. Faced with this inescapable fact during cross-examination, the solution of pedestrian guardrail offered by the appellant's witness, Mr. Casey, is not in our view, a credible or tested solution. Children living northeast of the relocated crossing will be faced with the new, for them, danger of crossing Wolds Road, which is what the proposed relocation seeks to obviate. In practice, those children who now found the pedestrian crossing conveniently located are likely to find the new location less convenient than crossing the road from the northeast exit from the school, where there is no pedestrian crossing. We are concerned that the relocation of the crossing may prove undeliverable, in which case it will not be possible to address the safety of children crossing Wolds Road by alternative measures. We suggest that the solution proposed to address the dangers to children arising from this application has not been properly risk assessed, and that the solution has the potential to do more harm than good. And having regard to paragraphs 102A, 116, 117 and 118 of the NPPF, planning permission should not be granted in these circumstances. Biodiversity. We believe we have demonstrated that the badger, bat, breeding bird, wintering bird and reptile surveys are out of date and cannot be relied on. These surveys are now at least 5 years old, and some will be over 9 years out of date by the time the development starts. Although there's been some limited update work relating to badgers and bats, no such effort has been made for breeding birds, wintering birds and reptiles. New comprehensive surveys should have been undertaken. In this regard, we have drawn attention to guidance produced by the Chartered Institute of Ecology and Environmental Management, which advises that any report over 3 years old is unlikely to be valid. It does not seem credible that the degree of flexibility afforded in this guidance is so open-ended as to allow the passage of such a long period of time before a survey is out of date, particularly during this period of changing weather patterns and where, as in this case, there have been other changes, including deforestation of adjacent land, changes to surface water through the site, and an increase in the extent of rush pasture. In both appeal submissions and cross-examination, the appellants have defended this lack of up-to-date survey work largely on the basis that the extent of livestock grazing the site has not changed since 2020. Setting aside that the most wintering bird surveys were carried out in 2017, we dispute the assertion that the agricultural regime merely involves intensive livestock grazing, and that it has not changed over the last 5 to 8 years. Some of the site has been mown for hay or silage, and during the inspector's visit it was confirmed that amphibians are present and that the intensive livestock grazing is not the only or prevalent use. We are disappointed that the Derbyshire Wildlife Trust has failed to provide evidence at this inquiry, having initially raised serious concerns about the biodiversity implications, many of which have been endorsed by ongoing survey work by local residents. We drew attention to the ongoing survey by local residents to record the presence of a location of species. This was at too early stage to be presented in evidence, but has confirmed the presence of many of the species of principal importance referred to in Derbyshire Wildlife Trust letter of the 28th of October 2021. I would draw attention to the evidence given by Sharon Bridden, which refers to correspondence with the council's ecologist, raising the concern that the proposed relocation of rush pasture may at best be problematic and at worst may fail completely. The appellants have acknowledged that whilst none of the hedgerows within the appeal are important hedgerows, some are habitats of principal importance. The appellants have submitted that the proposed development provides for the retention of a large proportion of the hedgerows and trees within the site. We disagree. Some hedgerow removal is proposed in phase 1, but most of the hedgerows fall within later phases of the development and are part of the outline element of the application. Thus, there can be no certainty about the future of the hedgerows, but it is clear from the submitted vegetation retention and removal drawing that there will be very extensive hedgerow removal within the body of the site. On a related issue, our evidence indicated that at least one of the hedgerows within the application site shown for partial removal is an important hedgerow. An important hedgerow is protected if it's at least 30 years old and meets at least one of several criteria, one of which is that hedgerow is part of a field system that existed before 1845. The map we submitted, dated from 1835, indicates that at least one of the field boundaries on this site falls within that category, and it's been suggested that there is a lack of evidence to show this was a hedgerow. Well, there's no on-site evidence that it was previously a wall, and if the test requires that level of proof, few if any hedgerows would pass the test, because early mapping does not generally distinguish between walls and hedgerows. We submit that a grant of planning permission would not be in accordance with paragraphs 187, 193 and 195 of MPPF. Landscape impact. This is a visually prominent elevated site that forms part of the scenic approach to Matlock. On your visit, Madam Inspector, you will have seen and been able to appreciate the beauty and distinctiveness of this landscape, which contributes to both the character and setting of the town. We consider that the analysis of landscape impact, which was used to defend the allocation of the local plan, was seriously flawed, and that the landscape impact assessment supporting the appeal application gives insufficient weight to the impact on local views and the impact within the site. Views within the site are dramatic, and although currently private, they hold intrinsic landscape value and reflect the best of the Dales landscape, which gives the district its distinct character and its name. The landscape may not be open to view by the public, but this should not downgrade its value. It deserves protection because it is beautiful. Whilst through this development, views within the site will become available to the public, those views will be completely changed in a way which will destroy the character of the landscape. We have shown that some elements shown on the indicative proposals for Phase 2 will have a significant and harmful impact on the landscape. These show the link road crossing a valley with relatively large attenuation ponds on both the upstream and downstream sides. The supporting structure for the road will effectively form the dam wall. Whilst the height of the retaining wall on the downstream site has been shown to be less than the 4 meters indicated on submitted drawings, it will nevertheless be a dominant and discordant feature in this most sensitive and attractive part of the landscape. We submit that the landscape impact will be severe and unacceptable, and a grant of permission will be contrary to paragraph 187B of the MPPF. On design, the appellants have clarified that the difference in the levels between the balancing ponds and the houses on Bentley Close will not be accommodated by the provision of a gabion wall, as was shown on the drainage strategy drawing. But there remains a lack of detail about how this will be resolved. The appellants now say that the tree in the garden of 5 Bentley Close, which is subject to a tree preservation but was shown for removal